Hey, what is up YouTube? Kolst here. So we got a lot to talk about today because the leader of the modes team in charge of Arena, Matt London, just announced that there is a surprise plan for the next patch. So I figured we better go ahead and talk about it, what we think it might be, and kind of the stuff surrounding what led to this kind of announcement of an announcement, so to speak. So the impetus of this tweet was actually, this is a tweet from Matt London talking about feedback coming from Zeddy. Zeddy being another Hearthstone creator, actually making this video about why he won't play Arena anymore. Basically kind of giving some critiques on the mode and some of the issues he sees. So in a little bit we'll talk about that and kind of my thoughts on all of this, but first I just want to talk about like kind of what we think this event will be. So it has been kind of teased. There's been tweets kind of implying this kind of stuff. What we think might be happening is Taverns of Time 2.0 basically. So if you don't know what Taverns of Time was, this was basically the last time Arena had an event outside of Dual Class, which happens every year around Halloween time. And the last time they did this was 4 years ago. So yeah, it's been a very, very long time. That was the last time prior to basically right now that Arena got significant support. The support basically got cut off in 2019. So what happened in Taverns of Time was basically there were a whole bunch of cards which were exclusive, entirely exclusive to Arena, which basically they did a whole bunch of wacky things. Of course, it was a time-based event with Chromie and all these kind of things, so there were a whole bunch of weird cards with doing dormant, around card draw, manipulating turn timers, just a whole bunch of random stuff. It was definitely a very interesting event. It lasted for 3 weeks or so, and I definitely knew it was going on, but I don't even think I actually played back then. This was back when I was like a Heroes of the Storm main player. Funny things to talk about, but yeah, so I didn't really get to experience this much, so I'd definitely be excited to play in this event, assuming that that's what is actually happening. I don't know, of course, we don't know if they're just gonna, come back with the exact same cards. Some of these cards wouldn't be too strong anymore, but a lot of them would still be very strong. So maybe but I would guess if they're going to bother with this, they're probably going to modify the cards. I don't know, who's to say. They might not do this event at all, but it does seem like whatever is happening, it's probably going to be some kind of a short-term event like this. Of course, when like Ben Hearthstone made this tweet saying, oh, it looks like Taverns of Time, Matt London is responding with these kind of tweets, kind of directly teasing, yeah, look, icons that look like Taverns of Time. So it's a good chance it is something like this. And the last piece of this is he said it is planned for the next patch. And based off my understanding of the patch timers, like this is 22.4.3, the patch that just happened. This is a minor patch right before a major patch, which would be 23.6. And based off my understanding of the timing, the last major patch was May 31st. These tend to happen about every month. So it's very likely that this patch is coming in the next like week or two. And I bet that Matt London wouldn't tease it so directly unless it was basically already in the patch or very close to it. So we should be expecting to see this very soon. So that is definitely something to look forward to for Arena. But with that, I wanted to dive a little bit into this video and kind of what, spawned this whole conversation on Twitter. So this is Zeddy's video, which I definitely recommend checking out. It was a very good piece where he basically talks about how, he kind of started out with Arena for Hearthstone, kind of like I did as well. I actually played a little bit of Constructed in the beginning, but then once I had gained a little bit of confidence, I started playing Arena as well. He was watching Crip and Hafu and a bunch of these other people, talking about how it's a great way to learn the fundamentals of Hearthstone, how to trade, how to use your resources, etc., etc. But then he talks a little bit more about how, then they started to introduce Discover, and Discover, started out not being too big an issue because you had to like give up stats and things to do it, but now they started printing all these other discovers where you don't give up anything. They just put it onto like totally playable cards, like Venomous Scorpion, or some class examples like the Explorers where you get to discover a dragon. And discovering dragons, you get access to super powerful cards like Raid Boss Onyxia, and there's cards like Neptulon and all the other Colossals as well that just have such an unbelievably high power level. And there is some precedent in the past as he talks about how, like they have actually removed a lot of cards that tended to be like single card deciders of games like Frostleech Jaina and some of the other Death Knight cards, which were nearly unbeatable once they came down. But there seems to have been kind of a change in direction sometime over the last few years, where now they seem to tolerate a lot of these colossals and other super powerful cards being in the game, but maybe they just want to limit how often they show up. But as a result of these cards being in the draft and also them being accessible through some of these kinds of discovers, you know, the reference that Zeddy makes here, which I've made myself probably, and I've heard other people make too, is that it makes the game feel a lot like a slot machine, right? And the slots are just like basically you get more entries based off of just how many of these super powerful cards you're offered. And as well as that, how many discovers you happen to get which are capable of discovering these cards. And then, you know, on a game-by-game basis, just seeing whether or not you hit the discovers. And a thing that I don't see talked about nearly enough, I think, is just whether or not you just happen to draw the cards you happen to get. Because, you know, as an extreme example, right, some of these colossals, you can make them slightly better by just changing the text on them to 0 mana win the game, right? And even if you have a card that reads 0 mana win the game, you're not going to win all your games. And in fact, so even if you have a card like that, you might still go 0-3 if the rest of your deck isn't up to snuff, right? Because you just happen to not draw it 3 games in a row. You know, that's one of the key issues I have when the power of your deck is, you know, isolated and confined to a limited or even single cards in your deck, is that possibly the only thing less fun than losing to a raid boss in Nixia is having your own raid boss in Nixia and then losing because you simply just don't draw it. But I think that mainly summarized the critique, essentially that Hearthstone and Arena specifically has moved away from this kind of fundamentals where you use the tools you have and kind of try to build an advantage over time and essentially outplay your opponent versus, you know, just trying to stall and just trying to discover a card that'll win the game for you. And in this reveal tweet, which we talked about earlier, Matt London talked about the feedback, saying it was well represented, which it was, and respectful, and how they're working on critically short and long-term solutions to these issues. It seems like part of the short-term solution to these issues might be just, you know, adding an event which will distract away from them, which, I mean, it might be the best thing they can do, right? Which could be fine. Because the crazy thing is like, I don't know, like I haven't made a video, like I'm going to be continuing to play Arena. There's been other people, even people who basically play Arena as their main job, who've been like very, very critical, much more even than me. I won't single anyone out right now, but I mean, I've heard comments to the effect of this mode seems unsalvageable right now in the current rotation, and they just don't know what could possibly be done to fix it. Really damaging things. Because what I would say personally is my perspective is that there are a lot of games that actually do have some very interesting back and forth right now, even including some of these really powerful cards. It's just kind of a shame when some otherwise interesting games can get really trivialized and just kind of ruined by a single overpowered card just smashing it down and just ending the game on the spot. Otherwise, the gameplay with some of these really powerful cards can be really fun and interesting. But I think there's a few things that give us kind of a sense of what they are thinking about doing. So Matt London specifically here talks about power outliers, which was a point of Zeddy's video, discover, which is a point again in Zeddy's video, and snowball effects, which is very interesting because this was not, as far as I'm aware, this was not addressed at all in Zeddy's video. So this is completely out of the blue. But if you're addressing snowball effects as a problem as you are for, you know, power outliers and discover, then I think the issue he's trying to get at is essentially not having cards that single-handedly end the game and more having a back and forth experience, which I think, you know, is healthy for the arena. One card I kind of want to call out in this snowball category specifically is the card that I actually right now think is the most problematic card in Arena. It's not the most powerful card, it's not the most innately problematic card, but just because it's the most common card in the most powerful class right now, it's actually Spawn of Deathwing. And the reason it's so problematic, I think, is just because if you're a little bit ahead and then your opponent at some point is going to have to try to respond with one large minion, and then you play Spawn of Deathwing and then you have a 6/6 and you just get obliterated. You know, a very similar card which they did choose to nuke the offering rate of was Knight Captain, which is very similar. It's 5 mana, it gives you a 6/6 when it hits, but the difference is Knight Captain can only hit on a 3 health minion, where Spawn of Deathwing will hit on literally any single minion. So I just want to make this aside to hopefully, you know, maybe this card could get hit. Because I understand totally that there's kind of a whack-a-mole situation right now. You know, Warlock does happen to be number one. If you hit Warlock at the top, there's going to be another number one, and then there's going to be another card, right? It's kind of a whack-a-mole thing, as I said. But just wanted to mention what I'm seeing right now. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is just that, you know, if they're acknowledging that Discover's a problem, which it does seem like they are, it makes some of their more recent decisions a little more interesting. Because if I look at the stats here, let's sort this by deck percentage. I want to point out just some of the top cards by sheer appearance rate in all the other classes. Warlock is actually one of the least RNG class, but let's look at like Hunter, Mage, Warrior, Paladin, Druid, and Rogue, the other top 7 classes. So Hunter, the most common card, Primordial Explorer, also near the top is Pack Kodo. 2 big RNG cards, Discover cards. Let's look at Mage, the top cards, Spell Coiler, random. Sweeper, random generation. Runed Orb, random. Amulet, random. Azure Explorer, random. Ethereal Conjurer, random. Let's look at Warrior, top card, Evil Quartermaster, random. Generation of Lackey. Paladin, some of the top cards, Seaflute Savior, Dredge, which is kind of like random from deck, but also Blessed Goods, random generation, can get a Colossal. Druid, top card by a significant margin, Emerald Explorer, way to generate a random dragon. Rogue, top cards, Jackpot, random. Violet Haze, random. Henchcan Blurgler, random. Swashbuckler, random. You're seeing a common trend here. I'm not cherry picking. This is just like almost all of the top classes and even the average classes, all their top appearing cards are random. And a lot of these are not only random, but they can create dragons or colossals or both. And so it makes it interesting that, you know, if they're acknowledging Discover's a problem, they've been actively promoting these kind of cards, at least and especially so very recently. So one sneaky thing Blizzard will do sometimes is if they want more data of something, they might actually boost it just to get more data. So that might be what we're seeing here. But also I think this might give us a little bit of a sneak peek into kind of what solution they're looking for. There's another tweet this was from when they did the micro adjusts, I believe. But the question was asked essentially, what can you possibly do to Discover, right? And he talks about maybe, you know, being comfortable with there being unpublished rules for Discover between Arena and other modes. So the idea there would be basically, you know, whether you make it based off of rarity or power level, excluding certain cards, whatever it may be. I think they like Discover, but they just are coming around that maybe discovering Raid Boss and Nixia or Colossals and things isn't the best thing for Arena and the general Arena experience. So it seems like this might be the kind of solution we're heading towards. At least from the information I'm able to see, that would be my guess. But with that, I think I'll end it there. So I'm really interested to hear what you guys think in the comment section. What do you think about this meta? What do you think they should change? Are you excited for the new event? You know, any of that stuff. Or you can talk about the paint on your walls or anything, because all comments help the algorithm. You know what else helps the algorithm? Liking and subscribing or disliking or doing any kind of engagement. But yeah, as always, thanks a lot for sticking around till the end. Appreciate all the support, and I'll see you all in the next one.